Good day, dear students. This lecture video is the second of the series of lectures that we will have for this course. In the first one, we looked at categories and terms that we can use in our study of justice, such as distributive, rectificatory, categorical, etc. We will make use of those categories in assessing the kinds of justice that we will meet in the next few slides and the rest of the semester. For today, we will be tackling the possible origins of our concepts or notions of justice. If you remember in the last lecture video, I asked you to look into or at least note your answer or thoughts regarding the trolley problem. I'm sure that we have thought of different responses to the dilemma depending on our views or principles. One core question that we are going to try to answer in this course would be, where do our ideas of justice come from? Is, is justice something that naturally comes with the being human? Are we born with principles of justice that guide us throughout our lives? Before moving on to the following slides, I want you to ask yourself, where do your ideas or notions of justice come from? These are our goals for this presentation. As you can see here at the end of this presentation, we will have seen that some of our ideas of justice are of natural origins. We will be discussing the implications of this in our endeavor of defining or studying justice. So as you know, what we are doing in the beginning of the course is to define what is justice, to define the essence of it. Do we really understand it? Do we really have an understanding of it? So one way of understanding or one way of tackling that question is through looking at where our ideas of justice could possibly have come from. So one of the earliest sources of our notions of justice, according to the literature, are varied sources such as religious texts, Greek texts such as the Iliad, and ancient texts penned by Confucius and Mencius. There are, however, other sources of or origins of justice. Greek philosophy through Plato and Socrates also gives us a comprehensive view of how to foreground otherwise hidden notions and ideas about justice. Plato also discusses the organic sources of our notions of justice, meaning that these notions are indeed natural to us. Through these so-called pre-modern sources, we will also be looking at divine justice and retributive justice. One of the earliest characterizations of justice, or the way justice is understood, is through justice as retribution, or retributive justice. In your readings, you have excerpts from the Iliad, from the Old and New Testament, and the Quran. Let's look at the way retributive justice is manifest in these texts. So first, you have the Iliad there, specifically the Trojan War. Okay, so I want you to review the Trojan War on your own, and we will discuss that in our synchronous session. So we will define retribution here, and in our synchronous session, we will discuss how it is manifest in the Iliad. So aside from the Iliad, we will be discussing the rest of your readings for this presentation. So in the Old and New Testament of the Bible, we see how justice is defined as what is right in the eyes of God. This divine justice is often retributive in character as it provides parameters for retaliation in exchange of an unjust act. Retributive justice also refers to how the punishment should fit the crime. Retributive justice thus looks at equivalence. If a wrong is done to you, then a wrong shall be done to them as well. Lex talionis, or the principle of equal retaliation, to illustrate even further, is a principle that is also followed in the ancient world. The code of Hammurabi in the ancient civilization of Babylonia was a law administered by the state. Theft, for example, is punished not just through the return of the thing taken, but also additional money or obligations. In pre-colonial societies like here in the Philippines, we have laws like this. Divine justice, reflected in the Bible, also reflect the principle that humans have no idea of justice amongst themselves, and so God needs to take it upon himself to administer it on earth. We see instances of this divine justice in Bible stories like the case of Sodom and Gomorrah, cities destroyed by God because of the accumulation of sin in these areas. Despite their prosperity, they refused to take in and take care of the poor. They also did injustices to angel guests in the cities. Another form of divine justice that we may have heard of is that if you do well on earth, you will be rewarded in heaven. If not, you will be thrown in the depths of hell. This idea of justice is also retributive, as it considers equality between act and reward or punishment. So there are also many Bible stories like Noah's Ark, right? That it's considered as a punishment for the people of the world, for the sins of the people of the world, that the world will be drowned in a sea of in the sea of water, right? So here, retributive justice is not just the equality of like an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, the lex talionis, but it's also the way the punishment fits the crime, which is a core idea or core idea that is discussed when you discuss justice. So the Quran is a religious text. As a religious text, also reflects notion of justice that are divine in origin. Again, there is hierarchy that humans must submit to fear of God or Allah. In the passage that you have read, you see notions of fairness in terms of commercial dealings and God being a witness to such dealings. The metaphor of death is used that makes sense for a religion that is not just a religion but a way of life. Like Islam as a religion, you will see in the literature and you will also see in the lives of actual Muslims, is not just a religion that is a part of your life, but is your way of life that is reflected in your culture, in your economic and social transactions, like marriage, buying things, selling things, right? So that is what is reflected in the excerpt that you read. As God sees everything, even sins, the excerpt notes that He will forgive those who repent, as there is redemption for those who do not want to be punished. Justice in this way is described as retribution with mercy. There is, however, an anti-retributive shift in justice, specifically in the Bible. If in the previous examples it is always about how a punishment or reward is equivalent to a crime or a good deed, respectively, some Greek philosophers like Plato and Socrates would disagree that this is the way justice should be defined. Even in the Bible, there is a shift towards in the New Testament, as retribution is now discouraged. According to that verse, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Another way that we can define justice and also look at its origins is through the ideas of Plato in the Republic. Aristotle, Mencius, and Confucius, and Adam Smith, though Adam Smith is not pre-modern at all, but he reflects some of the ideas that will be discussed here. The common denominator among these thinkers and ideas is that they think that justice comes naturally to us. How they came up with this is not that simple, though. A lengthy excerpt of the Republic is included in your readings for this week. In this excerpt, Plato, as in the style of the Republic as a dialogue or discourse among different characters, tries to come up with a definition of justice through interrogating people's principles, much like how we interrogated each other's notions during the trolley problem. Note how we discuss political philosophy as the way in which we could understand our notions of justice, through constantly subjecting our biases and principles through interrogation. So we will do that in our discussion of Plato's Republic. So make sure that you have read or your copy of the Republic is with you right now as you take notes or as you listen to this lecture. So the word for justice in ancient Greek is dikaiosune. This word does not directly translate to justice per se, but is equivalent to righteousness. It is also used to mean equality, albeit this is not the equality that we know in the egalitarian sense or the liberal, where everyone is equal and has equal rights. So these notions, or nuances of words such as this is also the purpose of discussing justice in Soksay 30. So as in the case of the Iliad in your excerpt that I have told you to review, read, okay, and read more about, Menelaus and Agamemnon in the Trojan War considered or have legitimated genocide as justice or as equal to the wrong done to Menelaus. Okay, so that's retributive justice. It is equal. It is not right, but it is equal. So it's not the equality that we know in the liberal or in the egalitarian sense. Okay, so justice for Plato and Socrates as reflected in the Republic, however, is not defined as righteousness, is not defined as justice in this way, but rather as social and psychic harmony. What this means, we will know in a minute. In the excerpt in your reading, Plato walks us through how justice should be defined and in the process questions people's normal reckoning of justice. There are thus many senses of justice that we can see in Plato's The Republic. I enjoin you to look at your reading or your notes on Plato while listening to this part of the presentation so you could follow because it's kind of long. So the first sense is that justice is paying one's debts and giving one each due. This sense was articulated by Cephalus when he said that in old age, all a person could wish for is that he dies knowing that he does not owe anything to anybody. As a wealthy man, he takes pride in not having any debt. Socrates asks him, is this really the essence of justice, that we pay our debts? Cephalus walks out and Polemarchus is included in the discussion. So as I've told you, the style of the Republic is that it is a dialogue. For example, a friend who is not in his right mind has lent you a weapon and wanted it back. Would you give it back to your friend knowing that something bad may happen? If you remember, I have mentioned this in a previous video lecture, that this question. Polemarchus agrees with the general take that regardless of whether your friend is sane or not, that you should return the weapon because you owe it to your friend to return their property. So it is consistent with this idea that justice is paying one's debts and giving one each due. So this is akin to our discussion earlier of retributive justice or equality of reward or punishment. It can be understood in this way, that you do good to a good person or in return of a good act, or you do bad or harm to a bad person or in return of a bad act. In this case, in the dialogue, you see them agreeing that indeed it is good to not give back the gun or weapon because you need to do good by your friend. They go on to discuss the essence or definition of who is a friend. Okay, so as I've told you, this is a long discussion. So they started from the idea that, oh, justice is paying one's debts and giving one each due. So the question of whether, so sige, if this is the idea of justice, in this situation of a friend having a weapon and the weapon is with you, but the friend is not sane, would you give the weapon back? So according to this principle, if this is your principle, then it follows that you should give back the gun. But now they look at the idea of a friend. Okay, so a friend is considered generally good or helpful. But then they ask, regardless of the goodness or evilness of a person, isn't it unjust to do harm to anybody? And also, do we people really have good judgment that we automatically know if a person is a friend or an enemy? So if you review our notions of justice from considering justice as consequentialist justice or consequentialist moral reasoning, they now move on to a categorical notion of justice. So ano yung consequentialist dito? The idea that if you give back the gun, what will happen? Okay, so they're now moving on to the essence of justice, which is justice. How do you define it by itself without consideration of the consequences of an action? Yeah, so what is justice when you define it as something that is just on its own rather than thinking about its consequences? So this is where Thrasymachus butts in. He then notes his definition of justice, that it is nothing but the interest of the strong. Okay, so he cites the examples of cities. In democracies, according to him, the people rule. In aristocracies, the wealthy people rule. In monarchies, despots rule. According to him, justice is the advantage of the established government, which is equivalent to this: justice is nothing but the interest of the strong. Socrates counters this argument by noting that if, indeed, rulers are stronger and they take advantage of their position to make laws that are beneficial to them, then does this mean that they do not ever do laws or implement laws that disadvantage them? Okay, so that's one question of Socrates. But Thrasymachus goes on to argue that uh, even so, justice is only for the good of the strong. Okay, so what is justice is that it is just to follow the laws made by the strong or the rulers. So if you have, for example, a monarchy, you have monarch there. Okay, and that is a bad monarch, meaning that he only makes laws for his own himself. What is just for him is that to rule over this group of people, one person ruling over the rest of the population. What is just for an individual or the rest of the citizens? What is just is that you follow the strong. Okay? So that's one simple way to look at it. Okay, but Thrasymachus goes on to say that um, if you follow, for example, if you're in a bad government and you follow, and that is justice, it is actually an injury. You know, so the idea of injure, okay, not just. Okay, so it is actually an injury because justice is always disadvantageous. So he now forwards this idea that justice for the is really for the advantageous, because for the disadvantaged, for the citizens in the city that I was talking about, justice is just following the rules, whether or not it benefits, whether it benefits you or not. Okay, so he goes on to give another example. Take, for example, two people who lead just and unjust lives. The man who has greater wealth, has slaves, and is corrupt. And because this is sanctioned by law, for example, he is the ruler, he is happier and more blessed. While the man who follows strict justice, the man who follows the law, or who follows the monarch that is corrupt, who does not steal and does not get money from the coffers of the government, would die poor and unloved because he has no wealth. Thrasymachus notes that this case is in the large, if you put this case in the large scale, like in cities or governments, then you will see the truth in his argument that justice is indeed only for the advantageous. Okay, so do you agree with that? After this, Socrates sought to categorize justice as either a virtue or a vice. He discovered that Thrasymachus' view is that being just is unprofitable and foolish-minded, while being unjust is good judgment. So as you can see there, what Socrates did is to unravel the argument of Thrasymachus. That no, what you're actually saying is that it's the other way. Okay? So after some questioning, they come to agree that Thrasymachus really did have it mixed up. What he thought was just was unjust. Like what the ruler, what the monarch, but the bad monarch, the despot is doing is unjust. And what the people are doing are actually just. Okay? Because a just man is supposed to be wise and good, while the unjust, ignorant, and bad. Okay, so there's another binary or another categorizing here because we are looking for the idea of justice. So this is due to the argument that a just man does not take advantage of anyone regardless of whether they are good or bad. So through this binary or through this idea that a just man is supposed to be wise and good, then the despot or the monarch that we are talking about is automatically unjust. So he's unjust because he takes advantage of other people. Again, it's a question of consequentialist versus categorical. Right? The consequentialist is that according to Thrasymachus, it's at the end of the day, okay, the consequence of justice is that only the advantageous or only the powerful has advantage in justice. Okay, so he's thinking of the consequences. But Plato wants the essence. Okay, he wants the essence of justice without the consequence. So he said, can we say that a person that is wise and good is a just man? Okay, but of course, the discussion does not end there. Okay, but Thrasymachus notes, he unraveled Thrasymachus's idea of justice as, ang sinasabi niya lang pala, what he's saying is that justice is just profitable, is more profitable than justice. So injustice is profitable than justice. So the next discussion goes in that direction, whether justice is profitable or not. So Glaucon, so another character, proceeds to tell the story of the Ring of Gyges. So I won't go into detail here. I will put another link to a video that you can watch. But this story is basically about this question. What would you do if you become invisible? The ring made Gyges invisible, and what did he do afterwards? So according to your reading, committed adultery to the man's wife, attacked the king with her help, killed him, and took over the kingdom. So how about you? What would you do if you became invisible? Okay, so these are the questions that we can discuss in our synchronous session. So they discuss that if you give someone a chance to be fully just or unjust all their lives, the arguments here are interesting and would be somehow familiar to us as citizens of the Philippines. Glaucon notes that, and I quote, the extreme of injustice is to have a reputation for justice. An unjust man will be able to hide their injustices all their life and have a reputation of justice. They can be unjust and no one will know, but they have a reputation of justice. And when you have a reputation, it comes with it honor and rewards. The just man, because we said that this just man is good and wise and does not take advantage of other people, they won't have any honor and rewards. Okay, according to Glaucon, he will die a just. Yes, he is just, but a lonely man. So therefore, according to him, so the conclusion is that people would not be just if they could in fact get away with being unjust. Okay, so there are really no rewards for being just, because being unjust, especially if you have a reputation of being a just person, is more profitable than being a just person. Okay, an actually just person. Okay, so these discussions, however long, however lengthy it may be, looks at how we can or how we understand justice as ourselves. Okay, so it may be the case that we think that, oh, justice is paying one's debts and giving one each due. Pag may utang ka, you need to pay. Right? It may be also the case, and could also relate to our experience, that justice is nothing but the interest of the strong, which is actually defining injustice in this case. Okay, justice is defined by who is strong. Okay, and then lastly, it could also be the case that when we are invisible, we will be unjust. Okay, if you're invisible, would you help other people, or would you rather do something, and because of impunity, meaning you cannot be you can get away with it, would you do something that your what did they call it, your darkest desires? Would you do your darkest desires when you're invisible? So these are ideas of justice, not according to Plato, meaning it is not his idea of justice, but we went through a process, okay, of questioning that, oh, hindi pala yun yung idea of justice, oh, yun pala yung idea of justice. Okay, so we now move on to the idea of justice according to Plato himself. So the previous discussions do not really reflect what Plato thinks is just. He discusses his own notion of justice through his idea that justice is doing one's own job or task, or having an occupation that best fitted him. So what is the best fit according to Plato? This comes naturally. So it is not discussed in the excerpt, but you can, but the next slide or video will discuss this myth of metals and how this reflects Plato's idea of justice.
All right, so regarding the myth of metals, we see in the last part of the excerpt of Plato's work, or Plato's The Republic in your reading, that he is actually discussing the myth of metals. As I have mentioned in the previous slide, this myth of metals is the the part of the Republic where Plato gives us his idea of justice. So after all of that lengthy discussion, he is now looking, or he is now telling us what justice is supposed to be. So if you remember from the beginning of the previous lecture, that we said that the goal of Soxai 30 is to discuss what is justice, or um, was a definition of justice. We said that we are tackling a very normative question. So in our sources, in our readings, we will see how people, or how these scholars, how these philosophers have thought about what justice should be, as it is a normative question. So we are now in the part where we are looking at Plato's idea of justice, which is the idea that justice is organic, meaning justice has organic origins. Okay. Or that it is natural to humans. Okay, so we are talking here about justice. Justice as or has having organic origins or natural origins. Now, so you see here gold, silver, and copper, or in other translations of Plato, it's bronze. Okay, so we will be talking about Plato's myth of metals. So there are several videos on YouTube that you can watch regarding this. No, but I wanted to make this part of the video so that I can explain better and contextualize better what we mean by Plato's idea that justice has organic origins or natural origins through the myth of metals. So in the beginning, it's kind of simple, right? That according to Plato, what is just is, according to the previous slide, what is just is that we, or one person, is doing one's own job or task, or having an occupation that best fits him, or sabi nga doon, performing the functions for which one's nature is fitted. Okay, so he discusses here an idea about the nature of people. Like when they are born, they have this. Okay, so he notes that people, okay, have gold, either gold, silver, or copper or bronze in their blood when they are born. Okay, so according to him, this gold, silver, and bronze or copper are the metals, okay, that dictate what we will be in our later life. And what we will be in our later life is part of a society, okay, part of a city state in um, in their time. So we will be part of a society. So these people, okay, who have gold, silver, and copper will now be part of the society. So each person who has these in their blood would now have different occupations and um different occupations because of their nature. Because the nature, for example, of those who have gold in their blood will be um, that they have leadership. Okay, for example. For those who have um, silver in their blood, they will have bravery. Okay, and um, for those who have copper in their blood, they will have industry. Okay, so there are many other aspects of these, no, but these are just examples. Okay, so every person has this. Okay, but he also notes that every single person, regardless of gold, silver, or copper in their blood, would now have several characteristics. Okay, so in every person, in every one person, you will have reason, appetite, and spirit, among others. That is also corresponding to these three metals. Okay, so according to him, justice is doing one's own task, okay, doing one's own job or task, or having an occupation that best fits the task. Okay, for humans, the task that is best fit for them is considered, or is dictated by the metals in their blood. Okay, and in every person, these characteristics, reason, appetite, and spirit, has its own goal or has its own task. A human being, according to Plato, will function well only if the reason rules over the appetite and the spirit. Okay, if, for example, your appetite rules over your body, your person, there will have problems in your body. All right, if you follow your whims, if you follow the things that you like more or you love more than what is right or what you think is right, then something will become wrong in your body. So that's what he's saying. So according to him, this characteristics of a person is reflected in the large scale in the city. Okay, so here in the society or in the city. So this means na, for example, if reason is gold, you should make it a way that reason or gold will rule over appetite or spirit and spirit. Okay. And that so in the city, the gold should be the one with the leadership, okay, with reason, should be the one who will rule over the city. Okay, so this is how we think or how we understand Plato's idea that justice is natural, because the idea that reason should govern over appetite and spirit in one individual person is the same idea that you should apply to the state, the city, or a society. Because, according to him, if you let bravery, okay, or spirit become the ruler of a certain city, then that city will not function well. All right. So in a different slide, I noted that in Greek philosophy, or in at least in Plato's The Republic, justice is considered not just as retributive, okay, but kind of distributive, okay, and this distributive justice is best characterized as the idea of social harmony. According to him, there will only be social harmony in your society if everyone is doing their own jobs. Okay. A caveat with this, however, is that of course we do not have gold, silver, and copper in our blood. Okay. So what Plato is saying is that we will tell this so-called noble lie to people so that they will follow, and so that justice will happen, or justice will be present in the society, and there will be social harmony. Okay, so the point is that the organic origin of justice that Plato was saying is that the principle that we use to understand or to govern ourselves, for example, is that we should always have reason over appetite over spirit, is the same principle or logic that we use in governing a city. Okay? And so, for this to happen, we need to tell this noble lie that everyone has a certain precious metal in their blood, that they are destined to have this specific position in their life, so that for example, these people in copper will be artisans, okay, craftsmen, carpenter, etc. Those who are brave will be warriors, and those who have gold will be the rulers. So, Plato's book, The Republic, also has stringent, very stringent uh, criteria on how these groups of people will interact with each other. All right. So, there are rules on marriage. Okay. There is also a rule on the family. In Plato's Republic, okay, in Plato's city, there will be no families. He says that when a child is born, they will assess whether the child is fit for that specific society. If that child is not fit, they will throw him out. If they are fit, they will be made um, to grow up with people of the same metal, no, same and they will not have a family. They will not know their mothers or fathers, because that will just um, be to uh, an obstacle against social harmony. So as you can see here, this is the idea of Plato with regards to justice. So it's neither, or it's not any of the previous discussions, but those discussions are also very important. Why? Because he has come up with this idea of justice through that process. Okay, so through that Socratic line of questioning. So as you saw there, he questioned every single idea of all the other people in the dialogue. Okay, so it's also the idea that we will have in this class, that we will just question everything that we know about justice, and see whether they fit in certain categories, or whether they are right or wrong. So as for Plato, there are implications of this notion of justice. This was actually used by this myth of metals was actually used by the Nazis to argue that they are the superior race. Okay, so this has implications. Okay, but take note also that this is hypothetical. Okay, so but this is his idea of justice. So if you have questions regarding this, okay, we can tackle this more in the um, synchronous session.
So the next idea of justice that also tackles its natural origins is that of Mencius. Mencius is a student of Confucius. He notes how true gentlemen, as per Confucianism, feel innately the following: distress at the suffering of others, deference to others, shame and disgrace. This simply means that as people, even though we are not the gentlemen that they are talking about here, we naturally feel, for example, we saw someone that is hurt, we feel shocked and at the same time sympathetic, that we want to help the person. We do not think twice, yet we feel. Like, for example, if someone is hurt, we do not have any relations to them, but we feel this way. So this is actually uh, the reason, or the reason why we sometimes watch sad movies, or when we watch sad movies we also cry, even though we don't personally know the people in that movie. It's because of this natural inclination, or natural feeling or emotion of sympathy to other people. So in simple words, we are humane. This is where justice comes in, according to them. It comes naturally. We have a sense of something, and if that something is wrong, or something has hurt other people or will hurt us. Mencius also mentions how we are naturally endowed with a mind or soul that is pure and just. Meaning, at the very beginning of life, we have this idea of purity and justice. When a man becomes unjust, like for example, if later in life he wants money and fame above everything, it will be the case that he has lost the mind that he is endowed with. Okay, so this is how Mencius has noted the idea of a natural origin of justice. While Adam Smith is not a classical thinker, his idea of justice aligns to that of Mencius or Confucius. For him, justice is a natural sentiment, specifically the natural sentiment of the injured. For him, according to him, we know as people how it is to be injured or hurt, that we naturally would not want this for anyone else. Okay, so there's also that self-interest that we would not want to be hurt. Our moral sentiments include sympathy for fellow citizens and the holding of our temptations to hurt others. Justice is this feeling of preventing ourselves from harming others. Justice is also something that a community of citizens agree upon. This kind of social contract will be the subject of the next lecture video. So for Adam Smith, his idea of the natural origins of justice aligns with that of Mencius or Confucius, that as people, we have this resentment of the injured. So in a sense, we understand justice through its opposite, injury or injustice. Okay? So ayun, as moral sentiment, we see or we know that we know what is just and what is unjust. Okay, so that could be one reckoning of the idea that justice has natural or organic origins. And so after all of those, okay, we of course ask what are the implications of the natural origins of our notions of justice. So of course this is not in your reading, but we will be discussing this in our synchronous session. So make sure to take note of this, and we will see each other on our next synchronous session. Thank you very much.